Ever since it was revealed that Prince Harry's security case is officially being reviewed again, something very interesting and very telling has been happening in the UK media. And when I say interesting, I don't mean subtle. I mean obvious enough that people online noticed it almost immediately. You didn't need insider knowledge, palace sources, or royal connections to clock it. All you had to do was pay attention to the shift in tone. For years, the British press has been openly hostile toward Prince Harry and Meghan. Relentless, aggressive, dismissive, at times reckless. They questioned Harry's motives, minimised his safety concerns, and painted Meghan as the root of every problem. That was the standard narrative. That was the baseline. So, when that same media suddenly softens its language, right as Harry's security review comes back into focus, people are naturally asking questions. And they should, because media tone does not change by accident. Editorial lines do not shift overnight out of kindness or reflection. When the press changes direction this quickly, it's because something behind the scenes has shifted. Something has made people nervous. Something has made them reconsider how their words might look in hindsight. And that something appears to be the very real possibility that Harry's long fight for security may finally be moving toward resolution. The moment that news surfaced, people on X started saying the same thing. Why does this feel like damage control? Why does it suddenly feel like certain voices are trying to soften their image? Why does it feel like bridges are being talked about instead of burned? And then, right on cue, came the headlines. Not about Harry's safety, not about accountability, not about the years of hostility. No. Instead, we got reconciliation narratives, and that's where this situation goes from suspicious to almost insulting. Because somehow Harry's legal fight for protection became an opportunity for certain people to insert themselves into the story and reposition themselves publicly. And the most glaring example of that is the sudden claim that Kate wants to reconcile with Meghan. Let's pause there. According to the UK media, Kate is now extending an olive branch. She wants peace. She wants to move forward. She wants to put the past behind her. She wants healing. She wants harmony. She wants reconciliation. And people are reading these articles thinking, since when? Since when does reconciliation come without apology? Since when does healing happen without accountability? Since when do you get to skip over years of harm and jump straight into redemption headlines? Because what these stories are asking the public to accept is not reconciliation, it's revisionism. They are asking people to forget what actually happened, to forget the silence, to forget the leaks, to forget the narratives that were allowed to run unchecked, to forget how Meghan was treated, spoken about, and positioned in the media ecosystem. And the public is saying no. What makes this even more transparent is the sheer volume of articles being pushed. This isn't one stray piece or one rogue journalist. It's dozens of headlines across multiple outlets, all echoing the same message, using the same phrasing, repeating the same talking points. That doesn't happen organically. That happens when a narrative is being fed. And the reason this narrative works at all is because Meghan's name still carries weight. It still generates clicks. It still sparks conversation. It still brings relevance to stories that would otherwise be ignored. That's the uncomfortable truth no one wants to say out loud. Without Meghan's name attached, interest drops, engagement drops, coverage dries up. So whenever relevance is slipping, whenever public attention moves elsewhere, her name gets pulled back into the conversation like an emergency lever. And that's exactly what this feels like. especially when you remember that just weeks ago the same media was running a slightly different version of this same story. Back then, it was William. William wants to reconcile. William has softened. William wants his brother back. The brothers will reunite. Same script, same structure, same emotional bait. Now the focus has shifted to Kate, not because anything has changed, but because the spotlight needed redirecting. And the most insulting part of all of this is how accountability is treated as optional. According to these articles, Kate doesn't need to apologize. She doesn't need to correct the record. She doesn't need to acknowledge her role in anything. She just needs to want peace, and that's supposed to be enough. But the public is far more media literate than it used to be. People are saying very clearly accountability comes before reconciliation, not vibes, not optics, not anonymous sources, not carefully worded headlines. Accountability, a public apology, a clear acknowledgement of harm, an honest reckoning with the past. And that's exactly why people don't believe this narrative, because they know that step will never happen. If reconciliation were truly the goal, it wouldn't be happening through tabloids. It wouldn't be leaked. It wouldn't be framed as a feel-good redemption arc. It would be private, quiet, and rooted in responsibility. Instead, what we're seeing is PR, and the headlines themselves give it away. Kate makes Harry and Meghan's return possible. Princess Kate brings harmony. Kate's shock olive branch. Kate sets an example. It reads less like reporting and more like image rehabilitation. And the reaction online has been exactly what you'd expect. Laughter, mockery, disbelief. Because people remember. They remember the treatment Meghan endured. They remember how narratives were shaped. They remember how silence spoke louder than words. And no amount of carefully curated headlines can erase that. What's also very telling is why this narrative is resurfacing now. Recent PR attempts haven't landed. Public appearances haven't generated excitement. Carefully staged moments haven't gone viral. The Christmas Carol event came and went with very little impact. Minimal buzz, minimal interest. So what happens when the usual tactics fail? You reach for the biggest name in the room. You reach for Meghan. And while this tactic may generate short-term engagement, it comes at a cost. Because people are no longer passive consumers of royal media. They recognize patterns. They recognize spin. They recognize when stories are being recycled. Another major layer to this situation is Harry's security itself. This is not a vanity issue. This is not about status or ego. Harry has been fighting for protection for years because his safety concerns never disappeared. The threats never went away. The hostility never stopped. And many people believe rightfully that this review represents a real turning point. The mere possibility that Harry's security could be reinstated changes everything. Because if that happens, it validates what he's been saying all along. It confirms that his concerns were legitimate. And that's deeply uncomfortable for a system that spent years minimizing them. Some royal commentators are now trying to frame this as Charles stepping in behind the scenes, that he's pulling strings, that he's making things right. If that's true, it raises questions about why it took so long. But honestly, it's just as likely, if not more likely, that this has everything to do with Harry's legal team doing what they've always done, pushing through proper channels regardless of optics. But as always, when something moves in Harry's favour, others are quick to claim credit. And through all of this noise, there is one constant that never changes. Meghan says nothing. She doesn't respond. She doesn't clap back. She doesn't engage. She simply lives her life. And that silence is powerful. because it denies the media what it wants most: a reaction. They poke, they provoke, they speculate, and they get nothing. That silence isn't weakness. It's boundaries. It's self-preservation. And it's exactly why these PR attempts feel so humiliating. They're speaking into a void, trying to manufacture relevance by invoking someone who refuses to play the game. And the public sees that too. People are saying clearly, Meghan is protecting her peace. She's thriving, she's moved on, and she has no obligation to return to a system that harmed her simply to make others feel better. And that's what this whole narrative really comes down to. Not reconciliation, not healing, not peace, control of the story, control of perception, control of relevance. But the days of controlling the narrative without accountability are over. People remember. People question. People push back. And until accountability comes first, reconciliation will remain nothing more than a headline. So, my loves, I want to know what you think about all of this. Do you believe this sudden shift is genuine? Or do you see it for what it is? Another PR stunt driven by timing and fear? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for tuning in. Stay safe, be blessed, and I'll see you in the next one.